Welcome to this explainer. Today we are diving straight into the epic narrative of the Ottoman Empire, distilling 600 years of history directly from our source material into one fascinating journey. I mean, imagine an empire so incredibly powerful that it dictated global trade, terrified European monarchs, and left a cultural legacy that is still deeply felt today.
So here's the ultimate question we need to ask. How does a minor Anatolian tribe transform into an unstoppable force that fundamentally alters world history? Well, the answers we're going to unpack lie in centuries of pure ambition, brilliant leadership, and calculated decisions that completely reshape the modern globe.
We are talking about 600 years, a staggering 6 centuries of continuous world-shaping rule. When you really pause to think about that longevity, it's almost impossible to comprehend just how many generations lived their entire lives, birth to death, under the banner of a single empire.
And their footprint was absolutely massive. The Ottomans eventually expanded from Hungary to Yemen, and from Algeria all the way to Iraq, straddling 3 distinct continents. You know, this wasn't just about land acquisition. This was the formation of cultural spheres that literally shaped the borders of the world we live in today.
Section 1. From Tribe to Empire.
Our source details how a relatively unknown leader named Osman I saw an immense opportunity during the late 13th century. Rather than just staying on the defensive, he and his son Orhan turned opportunistic border raids into a highly organized, expanding government. It was Orhan who took them beyond just raiding. He established regular taxation, created administrative institutions, and captured the thriving new capital of Bursa. This was absolutely crucial, because it transformed them from mere frontier warriors into a true, disciplined state, eventually expanding their reach directly into the Balkans.
Section 2. Fall of Constantinople. Okay, picture this. It's 1453. You have Mehmed II, who is literally just 21 years old, deciding to bring 80,000 soldiers and revolutionary giant cannons to tear down the walls of a 1,100-year-old, supposedly unconquerable city. Mehmed looked at the Byzantine capital and believed the impossible could actually become reality.
And his tactical genius was just off the charts. When the sea route was completely blocked by a massive Byzantine chain, most commanders would have just conceded defeat at sea. Not Mehmed. Instead, his engineers laid wooden tracks, greased them up with animal fat, and literally pulled 70 warships over the mountains in the middle of the night. I mean, it's a breathtaking display of engineering and sheer willpower.
So on May 29th, those ancient Byzantine walls finally gave way. But here's the thing. Mehmed didn't just conquer and destroy the city, he completely revitalized it. He renamed it Istanbul, and he actively encouraged people of all backgrounds and faiths, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, to settle there. By building mosques, schools, and markets, he transformed it into a thriving, beautifully diverse metropolis.
But taking this city inadvertently sparked a massive ripple effect across the entire globe. Because the Ottomans now controlled the vital trade routes between Europe and Asia, European kingdoms suddenly lost their direct access to Eastern markets. To bypass these new, heavy Ottoman tolls, Europeans were forced to explore the vast oceans. This directly led to the discovery of entirely new continents. So by taking one city, the Ottomans essentially helped trigger the global age of discovery.
Section 3. The Golden Age.
This brings us to an era defined by one of history's most fascinating figures, Suleiman the Lawgiver, also known as Suleiman the Magnificent. He deeply understood that a lasting empire requires significantly more than just terrifying armies, right? It requires justice. It requires strong civil institutions. So he reformed the legal system, invested heavily in education, and brought deep stability to the millions living under his rule.
Militarily, the empire achieved a stunning string of conquests deep into Central Europe. It was a terrifying momentum. Belgrade fell in 1521, opening the gateway to Europe. Then, the entire Kingdom of Hungary collapsed in less than 2 hours at Mohacs. The Ottomans were this unstoppable machine, and it's fascinating to note that they were only halted at the Siege of Vienna in 1529, not by superior military might, but by severe weather, heavy rain, mud, and disease that bogged down their supply lines.
But even with turning back of Vienna, this era was incredibly prosperous. Bustling global commerce flooded into Istanbul's Grand Bazaar. The brilliant architectural mind of Mimar Sinan designed hundreds of stunning, mathematically perfect masterpieces that still stand today. It was an absolute golden age of wealth built on naval dominance in the Mediterranean and deep royal support for sciences like astronomy and medicine.
Section 4. The Invisible Rot.
Of course, history teaches us that imperial decline always starts slowly. Take the tragic devolution of the empire's elite fighting force, the Janissaries. The early Janissaries were fearsome, highly disciplined, and fiercely loyal to the Sultan. But over time, the later Janissaries became corrupted by politics. They were heavily focused on protecting their own wealth, and they fiercely resisted any kind of military modernization. They transformed from the empire's sharpest sword into a stubborn political roadblock.
Simultaneously, the Ottomans began losing their greatest economic advantage. Remember those European innovations in ocean navigation? Well, it allowed them to establish their own overseas trade routes, sailing right around Africa and straight across the Atlantic. Merchants simply stopped flowing through Ottoman ports. The empire was quietly bleeding wealth, and they didn't even fully realize the severity of it yet.
Section 5. The Sick Man of Europe. Those quiet cracks eventually built into a devastating domino effect. It really started with a massive military failure at Vienna in 1683, where the Ottoman army was crushed by a surprise attack from Polish winged hussars. That loss permanently shifted the empire from expansion to retreat. Over the next 2 centuries, they continuously lost ground. Hungary slips away, the Balkans push for independence, and Russia aggressively expands southward into their territory seeking Black Sea access. It got so bad that European diplomats in the 19th century began referring to this once terrifying superpower simply as the sick man of Europe. Insulting? Sure, but incredibly accurate for an empire that was buckling under the weight of internal corruption, heavy taxes, and a desperate inability to keep pace with Europe's rapid industrial revolution. To their credit, the sultans absolutely recognized the danger. They launched the Tanzimat reforms, ambitious programs to modernize schools, laws, and railways. But honestly, it was like putting a bandage on a breaking dam. The devastating strain of internal nationalist rebellions continued to shrink their borders, and finally aligning with Germany and Austria-Hungary in World War I proved to be the ultimate breaking point. Despite some incredibly brave stands, like at Gallipoli, the empire's economy and resources were completely exhausted.
Section 6. Collapse and Legacy. Following the aggressive division of Ottoman lands by the victorious Allied powers, a united resistance emerged, led by a man named Mustafa Kemal. He successfully fought for independence, and by 1923 and 1924 formally established the modern Republic of Turkey. The staggering 623-year caliphate was officially abolished. History's longest-lasting dynasty had finally closed its doors.
We end this explainer with a profound takeaway from our source, which I think is perfectly framed by this final question. If the greatest empire of its age couldn't survive time, who can? I mean, if this monumental civilization, with all of its wealth, its magnificent architecture, its military genius, and sheer cultural brilliance, couldn't resist the tides of change, it really leaves us wondering what it truly takes for any society to endure. Thank you so much for exploring this